All right, comrades. I'd like to welcome all of you to another meeting of our Workers' International Network. The um, the subject, of course, is a new center of the world crisis, which is Greenland. It was probably not so long ago we would say this is not the first place to consider a key flashpoint or a center of world history. But all the factors of modern times seem to converge on this, the world's largest island, to bring it to supreme prominence. Uh, First of all, surprisingly perhaps, but global heating, the climate crisis, which has thawed the ice to make Greenland a key strategic maritime corridor. So there's the question of defense, first of all. It's a theater of conflict, of possible future conflict between America, Russia, and even China. And it also has relates directly to modern technology with the crucial elements that can be available to be mined in Greenland, key rare earth materials or minerals, which are so necessary to modern technology. There's also the question of the new readjustment of world power relations, the shift by the USA of its priorities, its retreat from Europe, its consolidation of the Western Hemisphere, of which the annexation of Greenland is an important factor, alongside, of course, Canada, Panama, and the whole of Central and South America. Now, Greenland is, of course, a kind of semi-autonomous colony of Denmark, and we're very lucky to have a Danish comrade Rolf Petersen, who will give us an introduction to the background and open the discussion. So, Rolf, welcome and open to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm not an expert on Greenland, but of course, as living in Denmark, I know a little more about Greenland than comrades from other countries. Well, normally we don't hear much about Greenland. Of course, in the past, there have been some scandals where the Danish government has treated the Greenlanders bad. That has coming up, but is now more or less we don't hear about that anymore. But what I will do is to tell you a little about Greenland and of course the situation Greenland has come to. I will share a screen. I have a PowerPoint. I hope it will function.
Sure.
Let's see. Yes, Greenland, as Roger said. Is it okay? Can you see it?
Yes.
As Roger said, it's a very big island, the biggest in the world. It's not green. It's very white. 81% is ice, but as Roger said, the climate change, well, the ice will melt. And we see that in Greenland also. It has a very small population. 56,000 is living in Greenland, and many are living in well, you can say there are 5 cities or well, will not call it cities, but of a bigger towns, and the biggest is Nuuk, the capital, where 20,000 of the inhabitants lives. If you're looking geographically, Greenland is a part of the northern continent, North American continent. It has determination, but it is not an independent state. It is part of the Danish kingdom. Denmark is responsible for foreign policy, and the government in Greenland is responsible for the domestic policy. And as you all know, Trump wants to take over Greenland. It is nothing new. He tried to do so in his first term, and now he is keen on taking over Greenland. He is threatened with military invasion and threatened anyone who supported Greenland and Denmark. They should have big tariffs. But he went to Davos and backed down, taken out, as it's called. And now we see there's a negotiation between Greenland, Denmark, and America, trying to find a solution. But as you perhaps all know, he hasn't given up, and he has agents in Greenland trying to change the opinion in Greenland. In opinion polls, 85% of Greenlanders is against to become Americans, and only 6% is for. And also in America, he has not majority. Only 13% supported a military invasion. Only 30% support America buying Greenland. And what is the argument of Trump's? Well, he's always saying that he need Greenland for national security and international security. But if we look at the history, since 1951, there was an agreement between Denmark and America that America was and are responsible for defending Greenland. And during the Cold War, the US had plenty of bases in Greenland with 10,000 soldiers. They still have a base in the northern part of Greenland with the radar system and so on. As Roger said, well, Greenland is rich. It's not only ice. Greenland has mountains, and in these mountains also valuable minerals. And of course, Trump sees it as an economic gain, but can also be used for well, modern equipments. But it is very difficult to get. There's no infrastructure. There's no roads in Greenland between cities, for example. So in the winter time, you can't go there by boat because of the ice. So it is very expensive to get the minerals. So, but of course he could gain access to the minerals if he wants to, because the government in Greenland is very open to make deals, to make money from their minerals. But of course, third thing could be the ambition of Trump's. He has the ambition to make America greater, and he will be the first, not the first, but one of the presidents in the United States making America greater. And then we also have this golden dome. It has recently come up that America planned to make this missile defense system. And Greenland is also part of this And very recently, the vice president was out saying that it will not function if Greenland became Russian or Chinese. So that's also a factor. But if you listen to the intelligence, both in America and elsewhere, there's no threat from Russia or China to Greenland. And they have no warships around Greenland. For now being the Russia or China is not interested in Greenland. Perhaps they could be in future, but not now. Because of the ice melting, this ocean here is now open in the summertime, and Chinese ships go this way down to America in the summertime anyway. But Russia is building naval bases here in the northern part of Russia. But they are not interested in Greenland, but they are interested in this area because they want to get access to the Atlantic Ocean. So in fact, they are more in fight with Norway. Norway has this Svalbard, or it's dealt by Russia and Norway. So it's here about we have some problems. So the biggest threat now to Greenland is United States. Both in Denmark and in Norway, there's big resistance against Trump and his demand to take over Greenland. We have seen big demonstration in several towns in Greenland and also in Denmark against Trump. What we have also seen is that Greenland and Denmark has come together. We have here the Prime Minister of Greenland and the Prime Minister of Denmark. And recently, the Prime Minister in Greenland said that Greenland will choose NATO, the King of Denmark, and the EU. And what also said was that it's not for internal discussion and division. It's time to stand together. And what he means by that is to stand together against Trump. But also the European leaders, both in EU, but not least UK and Norway, they have united against Trump's violation. Extraordinary, we have seen troops from Germany, France, UK, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Holland, and Denmark have been sent to Greenland for so-called military exercise. But of course, it's also a threat to Trump, because if he were to invade Greenland, the soldier would have to fight with NATO allies. But let's look at the history, because it's a little strange that a small country, 2,000 miles from Greenland, own Greenland. But the history is that the Vikings were settled out in the southern part of Greenland 1,000 years ago, and but they disappeared after 200 years, perhaps because the climate became colder. From the 14th century, Inuit came from Canada and settled down along the coastline along Greenland. From 17th century, especially here from Norway, had contact to Greenland. Norway at that time belonged to Denmark, and in the 18th century, Greenland passed to Denmark as a colony. In the 30s, Denmark made a lot of money from rhyolite in a mine in Greenland, and during World War II, the defense of Greenland against the German was passed to USA, and rhyolite was sent to USA to produce aluminium, for example, to the what we call it, flights. Yes, and after World War II, America wanted to take over Greenland, but instead they got this deal with Denmark, as I mentioned before, that they should defend Greenland. In 1953, Greenland became a part of Denmark. In 1979, was granted home rule, and in 2008 was granted more extensive autonomy. In fact, they have the possibility to become independent if they wish. If we are looking at the regional population, the Inuit, they were hunters and gatherers. They lived in groups on the coast, and they were specialized in seals. They used them for food, and the skin for clothing, and their oil for heating. They lived very peacefully, no murders. If you look at Greenland today, it's comparable to third world country. It's the poorest country among the Nordic countries. The average annual income is about 11,000 pounds lesser than in Denmark, and life expectancy is 10 years shorter than in Denmark. They have a very high rate of suicide, the highest in the world. There are lots of social problems, alcoholism, violence, and sexual assault. Many are homeless and poor, and we have very big inequality also. If we are looking at the 56,000 inhabitants, 29,000 are employed, and about 40% are employed in the public sector, in schools, as teachers, in the hospitals, and so on. 15% are working in the fishing industry, and 90% of the export are fish. Perhaps you know the Royal Greenland shrimps. Denmark's pay about half the Greenland state budget. So it will, for now, being very expensive to become independent. Many immigrate. There are 17,000 Greenlanders living in Denmark. They have trade unions, and I haven't been able to find how many are members, but the degree of organization is high. And well, they have very strong ties to the Danish unions. But why are Denmark keen on Greenland? It's no golden egg for Danish capitalists. The biggest raw material is fish, and fish is exported unprocessed to Denmark, where imported fish is processed and sold on at a profit. With this and trade, etc., there is a surplus for Denmark. Profit from mining, that was in the 30s, mining in Greenland now is very small and done by firm from foreign countries. Australia has some firm interested, and well, Chinese firms has also been there, but they were excluded by the Danish state. But of course, some American firms now want to invest in mining also. So let's see what is going to happen. But that was all what I had to say. I hope that other will come in with the what implication all this has to the international situation also. But that's all.
Well,
I don't know. How do I come out of this?
No, that's you have to. I think you have to. Yeah, get out of the screen sharing.
Stop sharing. Yeah, I'm trying.
That's it. There, it's all done.
Okay.
Look, Rolf, that was absolutely brilliant. Completely exhaustive information. I was going to say anybody has any questions, but I think you've answered in advance any questions that anybody might have. But of course, that's the background for a discussion of a topic which is, you know, up until now has been probably rather unfamiliar to most of the comrades, but it has, as I say, a complete and direct bearing on so many of the issues and the trends in history today. So who wants to come in first with a question or a point of discussion? Comrades? Norma. Norma and then Finn.
Thank you very much, Rolf, very instructive. So, besides, of course, the situation with the Trump politic on Greenland and other regions, I would like to know, try to understand on the grounds of the information we have and you clearly provided. I try to understand why a region, a territory so small with only with a small number of inhabitants of peoples, and having such cercanny, proximity with Denmark or with the continent European, and the history, including the history, why there is this kind of inequality in some sense, I mean, between the populations, because there are, I mean, on one hand, only fishing which with the resources, of course, there are not so much infrastructure and so on, but how, in some sense, an underdevelopment set, I mean, and on the other hand, there are housing problems, there are poverty for some populations, and also I know that is and the data you mentioned that there are a number of people, a high number of people emigrating, leaving Greenland, perhaps because of the climate, I mean, etc. But what also preoccupates myself is the high number of people who commit suicide. I don't know if my English is clear.
Suicide.
So all that, I mean, why this situation in Greenland, and how, and also the other and last point is, besides the manifestations against Trump and so on, but for the living conditions of the people, trade union included, which are the aspirations, which are the levels of trying a better living conditions or education, housing. I try to understand this situation in Greenland. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Norma. Next is Finn, then Dominic, then Thomas.
Yes, comrades, I want to thank Rolf for the interesting opening contribution. My question relates to the consciousness of the working class in Denmark. It looks like Trump, no, it's only a matter of opinion, but it looks like he's going to take Greenland one way or the other. Either seize it, and there won't be a big conflict with there's only token troops on the island from Germany. There's not going to be a conflict between America and NATO of any significance, NATO troops, that is. But in any case, Trump doesn't care about NATO. He's not concerned about NATO. He's only concerned about getting his hands on the minerals and, as he says, American mining companies coming in and then promising jobs and so on. Although most of these jobs will go to Americans probably who will come over with the companies. But nonetheless, what's the reaction of the Danish trade union movement, the Social Democratic Party, to the events that are unfolding in Denmark today? How is it being discussed? Is it being raised in the various fora of the Democratic Party, the Social Democratic Party? Is it being raised in the trade union movement?
No.
And then what would happen in terms of action in Denmark were Trump to take Greenland? So my questions, as I said at the beginning, relate to the level of consciousness in Denmark about the question. And just finally, just a comment on during World War II, when the US was given a mandate to run Greenland. Is that an issue? I mean, Trump wouldn't know that because he's just a fool. So you'd imagine his advisors would have told him that. He's never brought this up. But would that be an argument or an issue in the broad discussion, the fact that there was a time when US did have a mandate to run the country? Now, as I said, Trump has never mentioned this because he doesn't know it until one of his advisors tells him. But is that an issue? Does that come up in the discussion at all? But anyway, my main question is about Denmark and the consciousness of the Danish working class, particularly the organised trade union movement and the Social Democratic Party. Thanks again, Rolf.
Yeah, thanks, Finn. Dominic or John, is it?
John, it's just a question. The nearest country to Greenland is Iceland. And I mean, from what I can gather, there doesn't seem to be much contact with Iceland. But I mean, Iceland has a very successful fishing industry. You know, it has its huge exclusion zones around Iceland and exports lots of fish. And it has, from what I can gather, a fairly good economy. Greenland, on the other hand, seems to be a sort of typical colonial country, similar to Australia, similar to Canada and America. It has an indigenous population, as far as I can make out, of Inuit people, you know, Eskimos, and they seem to have the same problems that the Native Americans have in Canada and in America, and also the Aborigines in Australia. And that is that there is a huge amount of alcoholism, mental health issues. Again, that stems largely from the treatment of the incomers, the white settlers from Europe. And it just, you know, I just wonder if there's any mileage in trying to link up with Iceland. I think the points Finn made about the trade unions are important, because I think as far as Trump is concerned, he's looking at Venezuela, he's looking at Canada, he's looking at Greenland as opportunities to make vast amounts of money, and couldn't give a damn about any environmental issues that would come out of that, and probably couldn't give a damn about the welfare of the native peoples of Greenland. So that's the, you know, it just strikes me that up to now, Greenland has been seen as somewhere that has a small population of native people and belongs to a European country. And, you know, there's very little else that we seem to know about it. I mean, Trump's thing was he doesn't want to come into an agreement with Denmark, because the way he's put it is, if you lease something, it doesn't belong to you and you've no interest in it. But if you own it, then you have an interest in it. But ownership for America will be big business, probably huge pollution. And, you know, it's a sort of, well, it has a nightmare scenario to my mind. I'll leave it at that, comrades.
Oh, thank you. Very good questions. Thomas.
Well, thanks, Rolf. I think Rolf's presentation makes clear one or two things. One, that Greenland has nothing of immediate interest to anybody that is worth breaking the relationship of the USA with Europe, or creating all this tension. If there is some economic interest, is just in the depth of time and not now. And it seems that that's not where we should start looking for motives. Neither does it have any meaning as a security issue. In the same way, America had all these bases in Greenland during the Cold War, and it has a big base now in Greenland anyway. They could easily negotiate a security plan that would make both Greenland and Denmark and Europe happy that the America continues to be responsible for the security of Greenland without anything else. So I think we should look at what Trump is doing now the same way he's doing in every other country that he's threatening to attack. He doesn't want to attack these countries. What he wants is to threaten, is to impose, is to make sure that everybody understands that he's the boss. And this is the sad end of capitalist relationships these days. what happened is that they started to quarrel among themselves. They started to fight again the same way as they were fighting during the First World War, as described by Lenin in the Second World War, and they have. And Trump is part of this irrational, suicidal politics that bring the world to the edge of disaster. And in this sense, I think it does make sense. And somebody said that not only there is madness in his there is a method in his madness, but madness is his method. That's what he's doing. He's trying to win the world supremacy game all over again. And in this sense, it is important. Never in my wildest dream did I think that the Arctic or the Antarctic would become a flashpoint of conflict, especially not between Europe and the US. But apparently he leaves no choice to anybody. And this is where I think the working class has a lot to do. And what the working class, how the working class reacts in Europe, how it reacts in America, that's where the important thing is. Because if they start supporting their own country against the other countries that are in conflict with, then we are going headlong into war situation, and this is the great danger. And I think it is important that we realize that this madness can only start if there is an overthrow of this system in every country. Now is the beginning of a revolutionary period. I'm not saying revolution is coming tomorrow, because there is not enough forces to be seen on the ground. But this is the situation. In the Second World War was just a failure, such a failure. And I'm afraid that unless these conflicts take an internal dimension as well, we are doomed to have another war, much more destructive, much more problematic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Pam.
It's also the consideration of environmental damage if Trump were to get in and exploit the resources of Greenland. I wonder if Rolf can throw any insights into that, please.
Okay, well, look, there's no other hands up. And Rolf, you've got a huge array of questions there. If you'd like to come back and answer some of them, and by that time, I'm sure other comrades will be wanting to raise new issues. So, Rolf.
Yes, thank you. Well, if you look at the working class in Denmark, the unions and so on, it has not been a very big issue for the unions. They are more or less united against Trump, but there has not been any demonstration and so on. If you look at the parliament, Danish parliament, all the political parties, they agree to be against Trump's demand, so the Danish government has support from all the parties, from the left, very left, to the very right wing parties. If you look at Iceland, Iceland is also a former colony of Denmark. It became independent during the Second World War. And it's well, I think they are European, the European people. They're not what you can call what do you call it in well, primitive people like in Greenland. And by the way, America has a very big base also in Iceland. But it's correct that they live from fishing, but they also have a big industry because they have heat. They have heat in the ground, so they have lots of energy, so they can use it for example, aluminium production. So that has made them rich. So that's right. So it's another situation in Iceland. And of course, all primitive people in the world have not gained very much from our civilization. They have got alcoholism and so on. So as we see in Greenland also. And but of course, the situation is better now than 10, 20 years ago. And we also see that they have a possibility for education. They have a university in Greenland. They have a possibility to be students and so on. But still, they have to learn Danish. They have to, and it's only a part of Greenlanders who can speak well Danish fluent. So that's a problem also. So if you are going to have a career, you have to speak Danish. The inequality, well, it is well. There has been cases of corruption. Some of the political the people in policy, they have taken money from the state and so on. So that's also been a problem. But in many ways, the situation is becoming better in Greenland for the now being. But of course, we have an upswing. So if you have an international crisis, of course there will be it also. Yeah, I don't know if I answered all the questions, but anyway, before there was a big movement to become independent from Denmark, but that is now put on a hold anyway in the present situation. Okay, that's for now.
Hey, right. Any more questions? Any more points of discussion, comrade? Well, maybe I could just bring one point to comrade's attention, which is what this sudden interest in Greenland represents partly is the new strategic the new strategic outlook of the USA under Trump, because it is a change, and I think we have to understand it as, in one sense, of course, make America great again. It's very aggressive. It's very it's very much assertive of America's prominence and so on. But at the same time, what that disguises is also a retreat from the previous ambitions to actually run the world. And this is spelt out very, very clearly with almost brutal frankness in a document which has came out recently, which is produced by the U.S. Department of War, as it's called now. Used to be the U.S. Department of Defense, and it's called the U.S. Defense Strategy 2026, and it spells out with breathtaking clarity the drastic break that Trump is making with the global ambitions pursued by the USA over the last few decades. From its very first sentence, it denounces previous administrations, Republican as well as Democrats, because it says, just to quote from it, this is the very opening. Previous administrations squandered our military advantages and the lives, goodwill, and resources of our people in grandiose nation-building projects and self-congratulatory pledges to uphold cloud castle abstractions like the rules-based international order. Rather than protect and advance Americans' interests, they opened our borders, forgot the wisdom of the Monroe Doctrine. Remember, the Monroe Doctrine was saying that the Western Hemisphere, the Americas, belongs exclusively to us. It ceded our influence in our hemisphere. It outsourced America's industry. They sent America's brave sons and daughters to fight war after rudderless war, to topple regimes and nation build halfway around the world, and in doing so, eroding our military's readiness and delaying modernization. And it goes on, it goes on in that vein for quite a long time. And then it explains the contrasting strategy that they are now embarked on. The president's approach, that's Trump's approach, is one of a flexible, practical realism that looks at the world in a clear-eyed way. No longer will the department be distracted by interventionism, endless wars, regime change, and nation building. We will defend the homeland, that means USA, and ensure that our interests in the Western Hemisphere are protected. We will secure America's borders and maritime approaches. We will defend our nation's skies through Golden Dome for America and a renewed focus on countering unmanned aerial threats. We will maintain a robust and modern nuclear deterrent capable of addressing the strategic threats to our country, raise and sustain formidable cyber defences, etc., etc. At the same time, we will actively and fearlessly defend America's interests throughout the Western Hemisphere. We will guarantee US military and commercial access to key terrain, especially the Panama Canal, Gulf of America, and Greenland. And in effect, I mean, there's more, and I would like to quote more, but I don't want to, take up too much time to do that. But I mean, what you see is that they actually are abandoning Europe. That's the reason why, for instance, they're desperate to try and make a deal with Russia to end the Ukraine war. They don't want to. They don't want to commit their resources to defending Europe. Europe, as far as they're concerned, leave that alone. They want to try to make a pact with Russia, or at least a non-aggression pact to defend, an agreement to try to freeze, any risk of military conflict with America, and even with China. They recognize that China is a future threat, but for the moment, they simply want to build up their defenses in order to prepare themselves for a future conflict. I don't think they want to go straight into a war, for instance, even if if China invaded Taiwan, for instance. I would think that the way that the strategy that they seem to be recommending now seems to be that they would more or less give China a free hand in its own patch and leave Europe to fend for itself. And that's why, as far as they're concerned, they're prepared to break relations with Europe to, in effect, to disband NATO or to pull out of NATO, to take Greenland and incorporate it into their what they consider their own home patch of the Western Hemisphere. And so that's one of the ways in which this Greenland crisis pinpoints a whole turning point, I think, in post-war European history or post-war world history. So anyway, Finn, yeah, you're next. You're muted, Finn.
Yeah, I have a few further questions for Rolf. First of all, what are the political parties in Greenland? What's their influence? What's their perspectives? What's their policies and so on? And how does it work out in Parliament? What's the parliamentary division? So that's the first question. Another comment is, it strikes me that the mining industry and other industries are very, very underdeveloped in Greenland. So Danish capitalism or capitalists in Greenland are unable, for whatever reason, to develop the potential that exists in their country. And American companies can come in and do that. They can bring their expertise, like I said earlier, they can bring their workers over on bonus payments to develop the economy in Greenland, not from the point of view of the Greenland population, but to enhance the profits of the American companies. Would that kind of an approach eventually get an echo amongst the workers of Greenland? For example, Ireland was very underdeveloped in the 50s and 60s. Then the government introduced a kind of a free trade investment type deal where foreign companies could come into the country and develop industries inside Ireland themselves. And that happened and provided lots of jobs and lots of prosperity for lots of people. Now, it's all changing, of course, with the world economies. That's a question which I wanted to write as well in relation to Greenland, the underdeveloped nature of the economy. And finally, I think Greenland will occupy, sorry, I think the US will occupy Greenland. I think that is going to happen. So the next question is, what's going to happen? So the first thing, there'll be demonstrations. There'll be the usual crowd out marching to Dublin or London or Paris or else, complaining and giving out about American imperialism and the invasion. But that's not going to change matters. No more than marching around has changed Netanyahu's mind with regard to Palestine or the invasion by the US special forces to secure or to seize Maduro in Venezuela. There were a few protests here about that. So if Greenland is occupied, and I think it will be, what's the force that's going to stop that and reverse that? And we end up right back at the main point again, unless the working class organizations and the socialist movement internationally, including America, resist that invasion, resist that occupation, is going to continue. So we need to look at that. So just because people are opposed to it doesn't mean it's going to be reversed. There will be demonstrations, but what's going to prevent or what's going to overturn the occupation of Greenland, which I feel is going to happen? There are a few questions, Rolf. Thank you very much.
Right. Who's next?
Well,
Rolf, yeah.
If you look at the political parties in Greenland, a party, it's a social democratic party, has been has had the majority for several years, and also got many of the politicians became corrupt, and it was revealed that they got the money for themselves. And what we saw was that new parties was built to the left of the Democratic Party. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was a party equivalent to the Socialist People's Party in Denmark, who had government. But after the election in 2025, it was a liberal party. It got 25% of the votes, and the prime minister now is from a liberal party, but is in a coalition with the Social Democratic Party and one of the left parties. So in a way, the population is keen for socialist policy anyway. But as I said before, all of the parties aim for independence, and have the possibility, they can go into a negotiation with Denmark about it. That's in the deal about autonomy. But nobody is keen on it because they can see that Greenland is not able to pay. They haven't got money enough to keep the standard they have now. And of course, you are right. What we saw about the mining industry in the 30s, it was Danish workers going to Greenland and be mine workers, and very little of what came out of it came to Greenland. And I could imagine that the same will happen if, for example, American firms came to Greenland and began mining. Then they will have American workers coming there also. So the question is if Greenland will get much for themselves. So, but I agree with you that I think that Trump will take over Greenland, and what and the only thing which can stop him is, of course, if the American people resist. I don't think that France or NATO, other NATO countries will stop him anyway. Of course, as you said, there will be a demonstration and protests also among the working class, but it will be very difficult to see that they can do much. So I don't know if I answered the questions. Yes, that was what I would say.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Rolf. Jimmy.
Just a brief point of clarification, Rolf. You mentioned that the Liberal Party is part of the government. Now, a Liberal Party is a definition that needs clarification throughout Europe, because on the one hand, you have the like of the British Liberal Party, or what was the British Liberal Party, who were claimed to be moderate capitalists, but you also have other Liberal parties who use the label to cover a far-right existence and a far-right agenda. So I just want to clarify whether we're talking about gentlemanly capitalists or the far-right.
Well, it's a gentleman capitalist party. It's a liberal, the capitalist market and so on, but not far right. It is what did you call it? Human capitalist party. It's not far right. I don't think they have any far right parties in Greenland. There are some Greenlanders would like to have to be Americans, but there's very few.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more, comrades? Still plenty of time.
Sorry, could I take advantage and ask another question? There is a small history of immigration into Greenland from Europe and from Asia. For example, there's a couple of hundred Filipinos, number of Poles, etc. Is there active integration? Do the migrants to Greenland, do they easily fit in to the political system? Are they given recognition as citizens and the same equality of service as citizens?
Well, that's a question I can't answer, but you're right. We see immigration to Greenland from Philippines and elsewhere, and in other countries, especially the unskilled work. They have work in the hotels and so on. Often jobs the Greenlanders don't want to take. So, but there is an increased immigration from also Asian countries. But I don't know how they fit in. I can't tell you about it.
Thank you.
Who's next, comrades? Well, if there are no more questions, I think, I mean, maybe we can broaden out the discussion a little. I mean, it's Greenland, as I say at the beginning, it's a whole number of other issues come together, are bound together in this new sudden spurt of interest in Greenland. It's the climate change. It's the revised strategy of U.S. imperialism. It's the question of the new industries and the mineral extraction. I mean, it touches on so many issues. I mean, I'm sure there are comrades who could pursue those a bit further. I think part of the issue is that Rolf has given such a comprehensive and exhaustive information report about Greenland that there's very little questions directly on Greenland that have not been covered already and answered very clearly. If there are no more questions or contributions, then I think, Rolf, if you'd like to have a final summing up. Now is the time for it.
I don't think I have more to say about it. No, I think it's what I intended to say.
Well, in that case, comrades, it's been
Sorry,
very
Roger,
useful.
just a curiosity. As I understand it, the Greenlander language or languages are the majority languages, and Danish is in fact a minority language in Greenland. And the question that I would ask is that in relation to the trade unions, again, do members of trade unions in Greenland who have affiliations to Danish unions, do those membership have any discrimination by the language differences, or do they have equality and access within the Danish unions?
I don't know, but anyway, you have to speak Danish to become, well, to have a career in Greenland. So it is Danish is you learn Danish in the schools and so on, but many Greenlanders can't speak Danish. Well, they speak their own language in parliament and so on, but I don't know how it is in the unions.
Yeah.
But it is a problem, of course, that Danish, you have to learn Danish.
Okay. Anybody have any further questions? I think in that case we should just thank Rolf very, very sincerely for a really interesting and informative lead-off and discussion. I think it's been another very refreshing discussion with a lot of original points made by comrades. Next week, we are proud to welcome again Comrade Michael Roberts, the foremost Marxist economist, who's going to speak about the general outlook today. Originally, he was going to be speaking about the particular economic consequences of any conflict between the USA and Iran. It looked very likely at the point that when we asked him that there was going to be there was an imminent threat of a war. That may still happen. It's very much on a knife edge. But I've asked I've asked Michael if he would like to broaden the scope, and he says that would be a good idea. More on the general outlook for the world economy, but with, of course, reference to all of these current flashpoints. So, comrades, that's next week. Michael Roberts, hope to see you all there. Are there any other comrades who have any announcements or any points they want to make? Okay, if not, thanks to Rolf, thanks to all the comrades who participated, and see you next week. Thanks, comrades.